Welcome to my channel.
Doctor, are you sure you checked everything correctly? My voice sounded weaker than I wanted. I can't sleep without drinking tea at night. The clinic smelled faintly of antiseptic and old paper. The doctor sat across from me, fingers folded calmly on his desk while the second hand of a small silver watch ticked quietly on his wrist. He studied me for a moment before asking a strange question. Does your wife prepare your tea every night? I frowned, surprised. Yeah, I said slowly. Every night before bed. My name is Adrian Hale, I'm 33. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. The doctor leaned back in his chair. His voice dropped slightly. My advice, he said quietly, tonight, don't drink anything she makes. For a moment I thought I misheard him. Why would you say that? I asked. He didn't answer directly. Instead he slid my test results across the desk. Your symptoms, he said calmly, don't look like illness. A cold feeling crept up my spine. What do they look like? The doctor paused. Then he said something that made the room suddenly feel smaller. They look like slow exposure to a sedative compound. My stomach tightened. Are you saying someone is drugging me? The doctor didn't answer that question either. He simply adjusted his watch and said one final thing before I left. Tonight, pretend to sleep. So that night I followed his advice. I lay in bed, eyes closed. And when I saw what my wife did with my tea, my blood ran cold. I kept my breathing slow. Even the way people breathe when they're deeply asleep. Beside me the bedroom lamp clicked off. The room fell into darkness except for the faint glow from the hallway night light spilling under the door. A few minutes passed. Then I heard the sound I had been waiting for. The soft clink of porcelain. Claire entered the room carrying the familiar white teacup she brought every night. The smell of chamomile drifted through the air, sweet, calming, almost comforting. Almost. I kept my eyes barely closed. Through my lashes I watched her place the cup on the nightstand. Normally she would wake me gently. Adrian, your tea. But tonight she didn't say a word. Instead she stood there, watching me. The silence stretched longer than it should have. Then she reached into the pocket of her robe. My heart started pounding. She pulled out a small amber bottle. Not medicine from our cabinet. Something else. She unscrewed the lid slowly, glancing toward my face again to make sure I was still asleep. Have you ever trusted someone enough to fall asleep beside them every night, never wondering what they might do while you're unconscious? My throat tightened as Claire tilted the bottle. 3 drops fell into the tea. Clear. Almost invisible. She stirred the cup gently with a spoon. Clink, clink, clink. Then she whispered something under her breath that made my stomach twist. Just a few more nights. Just a few more nights. The words echoed in my head like a quiet threat. Claire placed the spoon back on the tray and stared at the cup for a moment, watching the tea swirl slowly under the dim bedroom light. I forced myself not to move. Not to react. The soft ticking of the bedside clock filled the silence. Tick, tick, tick. Claire leaned closer to the bed. For a second I thought she might touch my face, check if I was really asleep. Instead she whispered something else. After that, everything will finally be mine. My chest tightened. What exactly did she mean by that? She picked up the cup again and held it near my nightstand like she always did, careful not to spill a drop. Then she did something strange. She pulled out her phone. The screen lit up her face in the darkness. I watched her type a message. A moment later her phone vibrated softly with a reply. Claire smiled. Not warmly. Not lovingly. The kind of smile people make when a plan is working exactly the way they hoped. Then she whispered quietly into the phone. Yes, he's almost there. My heart slammed against my ribs. Almost where? Claire set the cup down beside the bed and turned toward the door. Before leaving she looked back at me one last time. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. Soon we won't have to pretend anymore. The door closed softly behind her. And for the first time in my life, I was afraid to drink the tea sitting beside my bed. The bedroom door clicked shut behind Claire. For several seconds I didn't move. The cup of tea sat on the nightstand beside me, steam still curling slowly into the dim room. The scent of chamomile suddenly smelled wrong, too sweet, almost chemical. The bedside clock ticked quietly. Tick, tick, tick. My heart was beating so loudly I was sure she could hear it from the hallway. Slowly I opened my eyes. The amber bottle she used was gone. Claire had taken it with her. But the tea remained. I stared at it for a long moment. 3 drops. Clear. Invisible. The doctor's voice echoed in my head. Your symptoms don't look like illness. My hands had been shaking for weeks. I've been dizzy at work, exhausted all the time. I thought it was stress. But now it was suddenly obvious. Claire wasn't trying to help me sleep. She was making sure I stayed unconscious. Carefully I reached for the cup. Not to drink it, to smell it. There it was, faint, bitter, hiding beneath the tea. I placed the cup back down exactly where she left it. Then I did something Claire definitely didn't expect. I stood up, quietly, slowly, and walked toward the bedroom door. The hallway light was still on. From downstairs I heard Claire's voice again, soft, talking to someone. Don't worry, she said. A man's voice answered through the phone speaker. When will he sign the papers? Claire replied calmly. Soon. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. Once he's weak enough, he won't even understand what he's signing. I stood halfway down the staircase, hidden in the shadow of the hallway wall. Claire's voice floated up from the living room below. Come. Confident. The same voice she used when ordering groceries or chatting with neighbors. He's already exhausted, she was saying into the phone. The doctor thinks it's stress. My jaw tightened. So she believed the doctor had missed it. The man on the other end of the call spoke again. And the documents? Claire sighed softly. Ready. Once he signs the transfer, the property and the accounts move under my control. The old grandfather clock downstairs chimed once, the deep metallic note vibrating through the house. My stomach twisted. Transfer. Accounts. Property. Everything I owned. I leaned forward slightly and could finally see her. Claire sat at the dining table with a folder spread open in front of her. Inside were printed pages, legal forms. My signature line was already marked with a small red tab. Beside the folder sat the same amber bottle she used upstairs. The man's voice crackled faintly from the phone. And if he refuses? Claire didn't hesitate. He won't, she said. But if he does? She picked up the bottle and gently tapped it against the table. Tap, tap, tap. There are other ways to make him cooperate. My pulse pounded in my ears. Claire leaned back in her chair and said one final thing that made the room feel colder. Either way, by next week, Adrian Hale won't be a problem anymore. I stayed frozen on the staircase long after Claire ended the call. The grandfather clock in the living room kept ticking, deep, steady, like a quiet witness to everything that had just been said. Tick, tick, tick. Claire gathered the documents into the folder and closed it neatly. She moved with the calm efficiency of someone who believed the plan was already finished. She picked up the amber bottle and slipped it back into her robe pocket. Then she turned off the kitchen light and walked upstairs. Toward the bedroom. Toward me. I moved quickly but quietly, stepping back into the room and sliding into bed just seconds before the door opened. Claire entered softly. She glanced at me. Still asleep. Satisfied, she walked to the nightstand and picked up the teacup. My stomach tightened. The cup was empty. I had poured it into the sink earlier. Claire frowned. That's strange, she murmured. Then she smiled. A slow, satisfied smile. Well, good, she whispered. You finally drank it. She leaned down and kissed my forehead gently. Sleep well, Adrian. After she left the room again, I waited until the house went silent. Then I reached for my phone under the pillow. Earlier that evening, right after leaving the doctor's office, I had called someone. Not the police. A lawyer. Because the folder I saw downstairs? It wasn't the only paperwork waiting to be signed tomorrow morning. Morning sunlight slipped through the curtains, pale and quiet. Claire was already in the kitchen when I walked downstairs. The smell of fresh coffee filled the house, and for a moment everything looked perfectly normal. The breakfast table set neatly, the grandfather clock ticking calmly in the corner. Claire smiled when she saw me. You're up early, she said. I slept well. Good, she replied, pouring coffee into a mug. You looked exhausted yesterday. I nodded slowly and sat across from her. On the table was the same folder of documents I had seen the night before. Claire slid it toward me. There's just some paperwork the bank needs, she said casually. It'll help simplify things for us. I opened the folder. Property transfers. Account authorizations. Everything signed over to her. Claire placed a pen beside the papers. All you have to do is sign right there, she said, tapping the red tab. For a moment I said nothing. Have you ever watched someone smile at you while knowing exactly what they plan to do to you? Claire folded her hands patiently. Adrian, she said gently, trust me. This is good for both of us. I nodded slowly. You're right, I said. Then I turned the folder around. Because beneath her documents, was another set of papers. Legal ones. Claire frowned. What is this? I slid them toward her calmly. My lawyer calls it fraud documentation and attempted poisoning evidence. Her smile disappeared instantly. And right then, someone knocked on the front door. The knock at the door was calm. Not loud. Not rushed. Just 3 steady taps that echoed through the quiet morning. Claire didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the papers in front of her, the ones my lawyer prepared overnight. The documents included everything. The lab results from the doctor, the video I recorded of her adding drops to my tea, and the recording of the phone call I overheard from the staircase. The grandfather clock ticked slowly behind us. Tick, tick, tick. Adrian, she whispered, her voice thinner now, you're misunderstanding all of this. I didn't answer. The knock came again. Claire looked toward the door, then back at me. You wouldn't actually do this, she said. We're married. I slid the folder toward her. Exactly, I replied quietly. Which is why I gave you the chance to stop. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the evidence pages. The printed transcript of her conversation was highlighted in yellow. By next week, Adrian Hale won't be a problem anymore. The third knock came. This time the door opened. 2 officers stepped inside, followed by a man in a gray suit, my lawyer. Claire's chair scraped loudly against the floor as she stood. This is insane, she said. One of the officers calmly placed handcuffs on the table. Claire Hale, he said, you're under arrest for attempted poisoning and fraud. The clock ticked again. And for the first time in weeks, I finally slept peacefully that night.